and especially because Mark and Shauna and Dylan will be with us tomorrow, I want to sort of do a big picture statement, which is that we began by thinking a lot about Napoleon, and in a way, the bicycle trip reenacts his military campaign in 1812 to Russia. And we learned the first week a lot about those military campaigns. And we've also been talking about how wherever Napoleon went, he brought many of the policies and values of the French Revolution in abolishing feudalism and making life better for peasants and opening things up to modernity and a lot of that. But I think we have to admit that Napoleon's military venture, if the purpose was to unify Europe, was a colossal failure. It didn't unify Europe. In the end, Napoleon, as you know, fled and was isolated in a South Sea island, and 19th century Europe was not unified at all and fought a series of wars, etc. In fact, history is riddled, isn't it, with the failures of European unification. And we've talked about some of them. Fascism, Nazi fascism, was an attempt to bring Europe under unity. That was a colossal failure. Bolshevism, we should understand, especially in its Leninist aspect, which seeded communist parties in every European country. The idea of a federated union of Soviet socialist republics was envisioned to include France, Spain, etc., etc. It was an international movement. It was a colossal failure. The Treaty of Versailles we've talked about was this effort that Woodrow Wilson and others had of national self-determination to create all of these new states, including the Baltic states. They were all democratic in 1920. None of them, except Czechoslovakia, as we've mentioned, were democratic by 19th. It was a colossal failure that led to World War II. There is one success. It's the success. It's very bad for historians to talk about the present. You know, we don't know the present very well. But the European Union has now been around long enough that we can say, so far, it's achieved a kind of unity that all of the others, including Napoleon, never achieved. And if it crashed tomorrow, the last 60 years would be notable historically as being, in some ways, more stable, more prosperous, more peaceful than those other examples I just gave. Now, for a news junkie like me, and I know many of you, because I've now spoken to many of you at dinners and Joe, who's not here, we're all consumed with Brexit. And Brexit makes us feel like the European Union is falling apart, and this thing that was created is becoming undone. But we need to kind of take the long view and realize that Brexit may mean a lot of inconveniences and surface trouble, but we're not talking about England going to war with the EU. We're not talking about, if we talk about Scottish independence, I don't think we're going to have a war between Scotland and England like we did. Is that the War of the Roses? Did I get that right? No.
That's Yorkshire and Lancashire.
Yeah, okay, all right. So anyway, but the point...
Mel Gibson's war.
The point is, England, Scotland, Ireland are going to stay democratic and in the democratic fold. No one's talking about leaving NATO, but I want you to compare that, and this is where I'll end tonight, with the Baltic states, with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. What would happen if Estonia left the European Union and left NATO, you know exactly what would happen within 2, 3, 4 years. It would no longer be independent. The EU and NATO, and I'm not sure which, they kind of play a tag team, don't they? And both are necessary. It's an existential decision for Estonia to be a member of the European Union and a member of NATO. And look what has happened to a country like this since they joined NATO, the European Union, and yes, even the euro, that the euro extends here. I think what we have done these last 5 weeks is not simply a reenactment of Napoleon, it is watching the making of Europe. And we started with the oldest European Union states, France and Germany, and then we traveled in the ones that were expanded in 2005, and it's just a downright miracle that Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are stable, prosperous, democratic republics. And I think it's only because of the success of the European Union.
Wonderful as always. Thank you. I think we